So there we go. So we're going to be covering and talking about what imposter syndrome is, looking at understanding the causes of imposter syndrome. There'll be a measurement tool that we can all use, so you can all check to see if you do have imposter syndrome if you'd like. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to actually overcome imposter syndrome as well. So I have these couple of little cartoons that I thought that were comics that I thought would be kind of a good way to kind of explain and get us started. So you have the little female characters, and Bob, can I speak to you in my office? And then I'm pretty sure that a lot of us have had this, oh no, I'm gonna get fired. She realizes it was a mistake to hire me. Bob, you're doing a great job. I'm giving you a raise. Oh no, more days until she realizes I'm a mistake, right? And then, and the other one, I can't believe how much good stuff is happening to me. Feels like hard work is paying off, but it's important to stay humble. And then the reflection says, you're a fraud. And he goes, I know. Yeah, all of us here on the other side figured it out a while back. People over there must be dumb. And the guy is just like, I knew it, right? So this is one of those things that definitely has to do with feeling like a fraud and a failure, regardless of the praise that you're getting. So the term imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome was introduced in 1978 in the article, The Imposter Phenomenon in High Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Interventions by Dr. Pauline R. Clance and Dr. Susan A. Imes. And they are actually the ones that wrote the measurement tool that I'll be showing you in a little while. So imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon, imposterism, fraud syndrome, or the imposter experience, is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Despite external evidence of their competence, those experiencing this phenomenon remain convinced that they are frauds and do not deserve all they have achieved. Individuals with imposterism incorrectly attribute their success to luck or interpret it as a result of deceiving others into thinking they are more intelligent than they perceive themselves to be.
A lot of people feel beautiful.
So the imposter cycle starts with an achievement related task. So in terms of mental health, this is likely related to seeing positive changes in your clients or meeting goals of your agency. So once you are assigned clients, the person with imposter syndrome then begins to experience anxiety, self-doubt, and worry. Examples of this are, I'm a horrible therapist. Why am I even doing this? I can't fix anyone. Is my boss going to find out? Am I going to be fired? Etc. After this, one of two things happens. Either the individual over prepares or procrastinates. If the initial response is to prepare, then the outcome will be seen as the result of hard work. If the individual procrastinates, then the outcome will be perceived as a matter of luck. The issue is that either way, the accomplishment is not looked at as a sign of ability. Even if the individual receives positive feedback, the positive is ignored. Then the individual again feels like a fake and is worried they are going to be exposed. So there's actually 5 types of imposter syndrome. And so building upon decades of research, Valerie Young further looked into fraudulent feelings among high achievers. So from her book, The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, Why Capable People Suffer from the Imposter Syndrome and How to Thrive in Spite of It, she was able to identify 5 subgroups this syndrome often falls into. And studies suggest that more than 70% of people experience the imposter syndrome at some point in their career. And by identifying the competency points, steps can be taken towards addressing it. Studies are also now revealing that imposter syndrome is spread evenly amongst men and women. However, women commonly face imposter syndrome regarding their performance, while men are often driven by the fear of not being successful or not good enough. So first we have the perfectionists, and perfectionists are never satisfied and always feel that their work could be better. Rather than focus on their strengths, they tend to fixate on any flaws or mistakes. This often leads to a great deal of pressure and high amounts of anxiety. Then we have the superhero, and because these individuals feel inadequate, they feel compelled to push themselves to work as hard as possible. The natural genius, these individuals set excessively lofty goals for themselves and then feel crushed when they don't succeed on their first try. And then we have the soloist, These people tend to be very individualistic and prefer to work alone, which is not good for how PACT works. Self-worth often stems from their productivity, so they often reject offers of assistance. They tend to see asking for help as a sign of weakness or incompetence. And then we have the expert who believes that they know how to do everything. They're not going to take any kind of assistance. They go about things in a manner of just thinking that they're at the top, but that's how they have to be, okay? So some of the symptoms and characteristics. So knowing the 5 subtypes is only part of understanding imposter syndrome. And there are several symptoms and characteristics that can be indicators that you might have or have had imposter syndrome at some point. So first, there is an inability to realistically assess your competence and skills. This can be a hard one since we tend to be our worst critics anyway. And then there is attributing your success to external factors, which means that you are discounting your own skills and ability. Next, we have berating your performance, which again comes back to being your own worst critic and now seeing the positive and not seeing the positive in your performance or your success. Then there is the fear that you won't live up to your expectations, which can be prevalent if you've had a lot of high expectations placed on your life, placed on you in your life. Then we've also got overachieving. This is someone who is taking on more than they should and constantly going above and beyond. I have seen this on PACT teams before, and these people tend to burn out pretty quickly. This can sometimes be a positive thing, but it becomes a problem when someone believes that this is what they constantly have to do. Then there are those that sabotage their own success, which is likely unconscious because then it proves their internalized idea of who they are. Then there is self-doubt, which we all have experienced at some point or another. In terms of mental health, this is likely to cause the person to believe that they don't have the abilities or the skills to help anyone. And this leads into setting very challenging goals and feeling disappointed when you fall short. For instance, if someone were to set the goal that they would be able to fix every client that comes into PACT in a short period of time, they would likely be setting themselves up for failure and then doubt their abilities, for an example. So, and it's important to remember that just because there's a correlation between imposter syndrome and the causes doesn't mean that you're going to develop imposter syndrome. It's just that you are more susceptible to developing it. So for anyone that's felt depressed before, it likely comes as no surprise that depression can lead to developing imposter syndrome, since one of the criteria is feelings of worthlessness and excessive guilt. For those that have low self-esteem, it's hard to be able to accept positive things about yourself. So it makes sense that someone with low self-esteem may come to view themselves as a fraud. Then there are those who strive to be perfectionists who actually tend to achieve less and stress more than those that are regular high achievers. This is due to setting high goals and working hard towards them, but will not accept anything less than perfection. Then there is excessive self-monitoring with an emphasis on self-worth, which again is, not a good way to look at yourself because there's lots of different things that can be impacting what's going on. In terms of research, it has been found that 2 main types of family dynamics can contribute to feelings associated with imposter syndrome. So families often label children with particular expectations, and children carry such labels and expectations well into adulthood. So the sensitive child may end up doubting her intelligence and any achievement that she receives. The same can be said for a child who's perceived as perfect or superior. This child then could grow up believing that they are only average and not worthy of their success. So then we have attribution style, which has to do with how you infer the cause of your behavior or events that are based on 3 factors, whether they tend to attribute events to the self or other factors, or tend to attribute events to enduring or transient causes, or whether they tend to attribute events to causes that affect many events or just a single event. Then there is anxiety, which deals with excessive worry. So it would make sense that a person with anxiety could be constantly worrying about their work and whether it is good enough or whether they are fake or a fraud. So like I was saying, we were going to be looking at how to measure imposter syndrome. And so this again comes back to the Clance imposter phenomenon scale. And the first scale designated to measure characteristics of imposter phenomenon, which was designed by Clance in 1985. This scale can be used to determine if characteristics of fear are present and to what extent. The aspects of fear include fear of evaluation, fear of not continuing success, and fear of not being capable as others. In her 1985 paper, Clance explained that imposter phenomenon can be distinguished by the following 6 dimensions: the imposter cycle, the need to be special or the best, characteristics of Superman or Superwoman, fear of failure and denial of ability and discounting praise, and feeling fear and guilt about success. Clance noted that the characteristics of these 6 dimensions may vary, and by this model, for an individual to be considered to experience imposterism, at least 2 of these aspects have to be present. Clance theorized that the most important aspect to understand the manifestation of this experience can be seen through the imposter cycle that she created. So here is how we look at in measuring imposter syndrome. And so over the next 2 slides, I'm going to be showing you what the scale is. And so it's on a 1 to 5 scale, with 1 being not at all true and then 5 being very true. And there's a cutoff score of 60, which is recommended to identify imposter sufferers. So if you look at this, and you don't have to do this right now because I'll send out the slides, excuse me, a little bit later, but this is something that you can look at to really kind of be honest with yourself and take a moment to score this and see if this is something that's been going on, because you may have been living with this for a while, but not really known how to name it or known what was going on. And this can impact your work in PACT, and it can lead to a lot of other things that we'll talk about in a moment. But you know, some of the questions is, you know, I have often succeeded on a task even though I was afraid that I would not do well before I undertook the task. I tend to remember the incidents in which I have not done my best more than those times I have done my best. You know, and that might be one of those things where I'm sure that most of us have had this experience at some point, where at 2 o'clock in the morning we can't sleep and then we're ruminating over something that we did that didn't come out right. So these are some of the other questions. Like, at times I feel my success has been due to some kind of luck. I often worry about not succeeding with a project or an examination, even though others around me have considerable confidence that I will do well. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on here, you know, related to how you're interpreting events. And, you know, if we want to look at this in a cognitive behavioral terms, it's also looking at the types of cognitive distortions that we are having that are leading us to being able to having imposter syndrome. So in terms of impact, there is definitely a high comorbidity between imposter syndrome and depression and anxiety, which makes sense, right? Because, you know, just like we were talking about that these can be the causes, they're going to be related to each other. Burnout is another one. I have seen this happen time and time again. You know, just during my time in PACT, I've seen it with, like I said, other clinicians that I've talked to that have gotten burnt out. And they usually are dealing with imposter syndrome at the same time when they're getting burnt out. Physical exhaustion is something too. It's one of the reasons that it's really recommended to make sure that you're taking vacations. Decreased job satisfaction, which can come from, you know, feeling like your clients aren't getting better, right? That's a big way that you can be dissatisfied with your job, and decreased performance. So if you're getting tired, you're burnt out, you're getting depressed or anxious, and then of course your performance is going to decrease, which I think they all kind of make sense together. So in terms of overcoming imposter syndrome, growing positivity can be done by learning to dispute negative thinking. So again, think back to CBT and overcoming negative cognitive distortions. This is utilizing skills that you use with clients on yourself or with the help of a therapist. Adopting a growth mindset has to do with actively looking for opportunities for learning and growth. This can be achieved through trainings that UW provides, classes you can take to get CEUs, and attending trainings that your agency or your community may provide. Also, visualizing success can help you become more resilient in the workplace to both criticism and change. This is where mental playthroughs come in so that you are better prepared to deal with situations. Use of positive self-talk is also a tool that we teach our clients and is something we can in turn use on ourselves. Then we've got breathing retraining, mindful walks, body scan work, and all those other tools and tricks that we teach our clients. We've even done trainings on them before. You know, we teach people to use these to deal with stress and other symptoms are also tools that we should be using on ourselves. And then again, you know, adopting positive coping mechanisms. We always talk about coping skills and making sure that you have things that you're doing and not just working, but making sure that you're also doing things that are bringing joy to your life. So the first step to believing you are not a fraud is to internalize the role you played in your success. So take the opportunity to understand that when something good happens, you had to play a part in it. There are always outside factors that affect you, but the key is to recognize that you did something to contribute to your success. So if you need to break it down to a basic point, you said yes to taking an opportunity that led to success when you could have said no. If you are struggling with thinking positively, then this may be a good time to create a record of your accomplishments and positive comments. This can be done from emails, reviews, etc. This can give you a positive boost when you are starting to doubt yourself. And this is also a positive step in being able to accept compliments in the future, which can be a challenge for some. Then you want to focus on helping others on your team. It can be something small, but making a valuable contribution can go a long way towards giving you confidence. This is something they actually talk about in DBT as well, is to be able to help others, which can be something that can be really positive for your overall mental health. It's also important to talk to someone. And as an advocate for talking to a therapist, that is one person that you would benefit talking to, but it's also important that you talk to your team lead if you feel safe enough, because they should be able to support you and problem solve solutions at work to help you through your imposter syndrome. So I know this one's kind of a short one, but that is what I've got for imposter syndrome. It's not a long conversation to talk about, but I still think it's something that was worth discussing. Does anybody have any questions or anything?